He's Hello and welcome everyone to FCI Live 2026. This is the last day of our first week of FCI Live 2026. It has been an incredible week, and I am so excited that we are finishing with this session. Hopefully, this is the one you're here for. This is Trust as a Resource for Organizing. Real quick, first, I want to thank our FCI Live champion sponsors. These are our largest sponsors who really make sure that we can do this whole series and make it free to every cooperator everywhere across the US. So thank you to Frontier Co-op, Cabot Creamery Co-op, and National Co-op Grocers. All right, so this is the session you're here for, Trust as a Resource with Dr. Angela Sayles from the Institution of Financial Unity. And I'm going to let her get her slides set up while I talk for just a minute. This is one of the new concepts in the food co-op development framework. And most people on this call have seen that before and heard of it, but it is a brand new framework that has been created from the 4 and 3 model, if you've been around for a while, that existed before that, about how to build startup food co-ops. And a lot of it was a restructuring of the existing 4 and 3, but there are some things that are new and really powerful. And one of those new and powerful things we spent the whole day on yesterday, practically, which was the business concept. And this time, this session here, this is another one of those brand new, really important, powerful concepts because I think people think of trust as the touchy-feely stuff, but really, trust is at the root of whether we see startup food co-ops gain traction, whether we see them gain enough traction to get to opening day, and whether we see them supported after they're opened. And this concept was brought to the framework by Dr. Angela herself. She heard I was working on restructuring the framework and talking to people, and she's like, I got this little idea. Well, it wasn't a little idea. It's a huge idea, an amazing idea that has really grown into something very powerful. So the creator herself, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Angela.
Greetings. Thank you, JQ. I appreciate the opportunity to share today. Are you seeing my slides on the screen? First
We are.
question.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, let's jump right into it. First of all, it's been an honor working with the FCI team on, rethinking the new framework for co-op development and adding trust as a resource to the development. And so today we're going to explore exactly what that means. Before we jump into it, just a little bit about myself. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, based here in Ohio, the Midwest, and I identify as a cooperator. I'm an accountant by trade, and I've been a cooperator for about a decade now. I'm also a research consultant. You may be familiar with the Rethinking Market Studies that was done with the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. That was research that we did collaboratively. And I've also just completed some research for the Collective Courage Fund on capital and capacity needs for Black-led cooperatives. We haven't released it yet, but you'll be getting more information on that. Also a community-based educator. I work here in the city of Cleveland with the city, with the working group called Vital Neighborhoods. We're working on an emerging green space community land trust here, and I've developed curriculum for residents who want to develop green space because we have like 20,000 vacant lots in the city. And so that's work that I do locally. I also serve as a peer learning group facilitator with FCI. And I'm an advocate for food and land systems, and I also do work globally. So I'm a mom of two, and my story. So doing the framework, as we were rethinking it and looking at the various components, hopefully you all are getting familiar with it. And you'll see the structure. We kind of call it a house. But when we're thinking about resources, of course, we've always considered knowledge, people, systems, and capital. But we needed to think about these questions that you see here. The belief from the community, and even if you have systems and you have knowledge and you have people and you have money, our communities buying in to the concept of the co-op, to the vision of the co-op. And Black communities, marginalized communities specifically, we know that trust is an issue and can be a barrier and obstacle for us being able to organize, just because there's been a lot of history of extraction, and communities have reasons to be skeptical when new projects are coming into the community because similar projects have failed before. And so there's just a reasonable amount of doubt and fear. And the question is, what does it take to gain the level of trust needed to be able to develop a co-op in our communities? And one of the big lessons I've learned from JQ is that the co-op has to have input from the community. We can't just show up with our vision and think that the community is just going to buy in. So it's important that we share information and also make space for input. And so these are the prevailing questions around trust that we're going to explore in this presentation. So one of the efforts that happened at the Up and Coming conference last year in September is that we did a co-creation session on trust building, and we posed these questions. What are the challenges to creating trust that we're experiencing in the co-op startup community? And we also asked our participants, what future ways of approaching the creation of trust can we imagine for ourselves and in the startup? And so some of this is informed by that. And what we found out from our discussions is our definition of trust. What is trust? It is not always the same. It's not, one answer. It's a very complex and personal answer. Some people said trust to them is telling the truth. Others said it means having my back. People said it means loyalty, transparency, you being consistent with your word, doing what you say you're going to do. And then there was another layer that says, well, doing it to the best of your capability, doing those things to the best of your ability and understanding, because we don't all have the same ability of understanding, the same capacity. So really understanding one another's definition of trust was part of the baseline of our workshop, because it doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. But one thing that really resonated is trust is not something you gain, it's something you lose. And so sometimes we're coming from a spirit of best intent and that we trust that we're all there for that. And so that's a good way to be until someone proves otherwise. But in short, as we approach this issue, understanding that trust is a complex and personal issue. So we're going to look at some tools and just some basic tenets, elements of trust. One of the things that we need to consider when we're organizing is that trust is not always assumed. I share with people my paradigm shift in my life. When I was younger, I always gave people the benefit of the doubt. I would trust you unless you violated my trust otherwise. But as I got a little older, I lived a little, I've dealt with, hurt and disappointments. I now feel like you have to earn my trust. I'll be in space with you, but you need to earn my trust. I don't give it as freely as I've done before. And that's something to understand about trust being earned and not assumed all the time. And so how can we actually acknowledge that? It means that we should name and validate things that represent broken promises, that represent hurt or betrayal, whether it's individual or institutional. And one of the examples that I give around this is a personal story of a good friend of mine who he, how he has a son, and him and the son's mom, the son lived with the mom sometimes he lived with the dad. And, his son told him that he felt like growing up that he did not feel supported by anyone. And, my friend who's a little older than me, he really was offended by that because he felt like he did the best he could as a father. He gave him good Christmases. He did better than his mom did, raising him. And how could he say that he did not feel supported? And so I talked to him and told him, look, you might not agree with how your son's his perspective on growing up, but he needs for you to acknowledge and validate his feelings of not being supported, because he that will free him, whether you agree it or not. You owe that to him to free him up and validate his feelings. And so I use that as an example. It's important for us to name the thing, whether it's racism, extraction, discrimination. It could be sexual harassment, or you slandered me. You know, even down to just dealing with the issue of slavery. Yesterday was the International Day of Remembrance. Dealing with, having privilege. And so we have, before we can even begin to build trust, we have to name the thing and validate it. Lack of trust is not personal, it's ancestral. We honor it before we act to shift it. Another approach that we can use in trust building is actually creating safe spaces. And we've added brave spaces, because you have to be brave to say things that's on your mind and deep in your heart sometimes, because, truth, it can be hurtful. But like medicine, the truth heals us. And so creating spaces where um, people feel safe to actually show up as their authentic self and be vulnerable emotionally. And that doesn't come natural to all of us. And so one of the tools that we recommend for that is to create community agreements for your co-op. FCI has community agreements, and they can be general or they can be very detailed, depending on, the venue or how the gathering, but it should be developed together. Co-develop is in bold for a reason. And so that participants actually agree, right, with how we're going to show up. And it may be listening not to respond, but listening to understand, or waiting your turn. We're not going to talk over each other. Or maybe if we disagree, I'm not going to attack you, but finding rules of engagement and ways to communicate. But we do want to assume the best intent, because we are here cooperating. But we don't want to come in with trying to fix or save or advising without others' permission. And so that is a written document. Some organizations use it, but it's something that you can create for your co-op. I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay. Um, so another thing, I see some stuff going on in the chat. I'll check it out in a minute, but I want to say we need to understand who we're with. Who are we cooperatively working with, and how do we get to know the people that we're working with? I know that, and many times in the Black-led co-ops, we need to have cultural competency in our co-ops, because there's nuances with culture. And also, there's different levels of emotional intelligence. There's different levels of experiential exposure. And so one way we can get to know each other and understand who we're with is by, creating listening sessions, or what we call kitchen table talks, and having opportunities to have those one-on-one conversations, those small group conversations, because sometimes we feel more comfortable trust building and sharing in a more intimate setting. As an accountant, I work with people's finances. And so even when we do workshops publicly, people don't want to talk about their finances in public. That's something that's a sensitive topic. And so things that are going on at home or going on in the business or in the co-op, sometimes is a good idea to, host your members, your participants, your other stakeholders. And you can literally do relationship mapping. This is, some of you may have done that for your community-based mapping. Is similar, where you look at the strength of your relationships and see who you have good relationships with, who you might want to do more building with, or people you don't know that you need to have a relationship with, and really map that out. And so these are some of the things that co-ops can do in their organizing efforts, just to understand who you with and maybe who you want to be with. And the third bullet I will mention, we should ask ourselves the question, and this is something I got from one of my sisters, like, do I see this person in my future? I know we're cooperators, but we have to ask ourselves sometimes, is the relationship worth putting in the effort And is it worth the fight? So if you have determined, yes, we're going to cooperate, I feel this relationship is worth fighting for, then do that, right? But sometimes it's also okay for your personal care to have safe distance from people. So just being real about trust isn't just about building programs, it's built by presence. And before we start recruiting, we should have those relationships in place. Relationship precedes recruitment. Okay, so this next idea is around repairing culture and practicing healing. I already mentioned naming harm. Um, One of the ways that this can happen is through restorative circles, trust restorative circles. And I know that the Partnership Fund is working on a wholeness and belonging experiment that is emerging in the power building space, so that we have spaces where we can tell the truth. And even though we may be working towards building our relationship, it doesn't mean that the mistrust won't resurface. And so, it's an ongoing opportunity for us to look for restoration and be able to practice healing. And, something I realize is that if we're not whole ourselves, and in many communities, we've dealt with a lot of trauma. So we didn't know how to call the distrust and the dysfunctional behaviors that we have. We didn't have names for them back when, but now we can identify these things as trauma informed experiences. You know, I work with women, and sometimes women have gone through a lot of different violations, and it's not something you get over right away. And so having restorative circles is something that the co-op can do in the organizing effort to help handle sensitive situations with humility and care. That's a real tool. Another example I wanted to give about this was I had a recent situation around some of my material that I need to copyright being used for grant writing, that as a cooperator, I'm like, it's okay because I'm there for the benefit of the whole. You can use my report or my information, whatever it was. I think it was a curriculum. But when I was reading the grant over, some of the language in it was like, okay, this Angela created this, but it may belong to the institution later on. And that was put in the grant without a discussion. And so I think, developing a culture too that we're giving appropriate credit and how to hold credit and give credit, especially in marginalized communities, can help, with practicing healing and repairing culture that we don't continue to do um, some of those things to continue the harm. Um, Next, we talk about storytelling and having a collective story, inviting people in your co-op to share their stories, kind of like I just did. Sometimes it is a story of betrayal, but sometimes it's a story of victory and community care. So we want to also share those. And so having your cooperators be able to share their stories and, using questions by asking them, when was there a time that they felt trusted in the group? What does trust actually look like in practice? And, what does trust mean to you? Which is a leading question that we had in our co-creator group, and then coming up with a collective story. And the benefit of this and trust building is that when people hear their ideas and part of their story in the narrative, when it comes out to the public, it makes the community feel like they are part of it. Yes, you heard me. Yes, that's something that I added, and it builds a communal why. And that's our North Star, right? That's right there at the top, the vision. Why are we here? And another strategy we're using, just in the with the Black-led co-ops around trying to get resources, and we're talking about trust as a resource, but trying to get real resources, is we're looking at collective framing, where we're trying to work as a group of co-ops to get resourcing And that means telling a collective story as well, particularly to the funding community. Flow is strategic. I know that we're living in some chaotic times where trust is being dismantled at the very highest levels of our society and our governments, and it's crazy out here. I mean, um, but nothing beats taking the time to actually do the building of it, designing a ladder of engagement. So, it's not always going to be us jumping in. And in the co-op space, even we're different. I don't know if we have racial tension in the co-op community. Maybe we do somewhat. But we've been working on it for the past 7, 8, 9 years. And it's just been step by step. And so, looking for opportunities to have entry points with your community, whether it's volunteering opportunities, sharing a meal, like we said, the kitchen, table talks, doing activities for the youth, but just seeing how people are doing before we ask them to make commitments or to do share buying. We know we have to do that for the business development, but to get people to come and stay, it means being strategic and building that engagement. Let the trust grow organically. Okay, so another tool is the trust accountability ledger, and that sounds very accounting like. It's a promise tracker to show what people have committed themselves to and what has been completed. Another way to approach this, because we really want people to do what they say they're going to do. And many times as organizers, we can use our action items. When we're in a meeting and we're assigning tasks, that may be a less formal way or less, you know, uh, rigorous way to us to hold each other accountable. We want to do it in love, I think is the point. Yes, we want to hold each other accountable. We want to help build that trust, but we want to do it with care and with love. And so using, your action items of when you're going to do it, gently following up to make sure that it gets done. I know that some co-ops, like they have attendance accountability. If you signed up to be on the board or the steering committee and you miss 1 or 2 meetings, you're out of here because we need to get the work done. And so holding people accountable is also part of trust. Many co-ops lose trust not through bad intentions, but through under communication and over promising. Let's see. Almost to the end. Oh, okay. So having co-op ambassadors, centering, this is an organizing technique, centering your local leadership for mutual benefit. And I can call out some folks that I know have been ambassadors for many, many years for their co-op. Baba Malik, for one, at the Detroit People Food Co-op. Amaha and Kenya Baker were very instrumental in the Gem City Market. We have Aaron down there at Fertile Ground, and Mona with Clean Mother in Cincinnati. People come to the co-op really based on your credibility because they know you, kind of your social capital, and because certain leadership have shown themselves active in the community. And so part of building trust is how to transition that personal credibility and relationship to trusting the co-op itself as an institution, as an organization. So training and supporting those community members can be bridge builders because they're already championing the message for the co-op, and we should pay them, right, for their time. We're not talking about burnout here, but a lot of times, doing this work, we burn out because we're doing a lot of volunteering, and it's life's work, really. And we've heard getting the store open is one thing, but after it's open, that's just the beginning, and that could be 10 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years later, and we're saying it's just the beginning once you get the store open. So really, taking care and compensating our co-op ambassadors. People follow people, not flyers. Trust is most transferable through relationships, not just the information. And I think I have two more tools for you, and then we'll open up for questions. It looks like we're doing okay for time. So having difficult conversations is also part of building trust. And even in our own families, our marriages, and especially even our business relationships, it may be difficult to have conversations. So there's a tool called the Grow tool that I use. And sometimes you can even do this with yourself first before you do it with someone else. But I'll kind of just give you an overview of how it works. So, GROW is an acronym, and the G stands for goal. So, what is the goal of the conversation? So, this conversation today, our goal is to figure out ways of how we can build trust in the co op community. What is the reality of what's going on right now? Well, the reality of the situation is that we can less and less depend on the systems that we thought we could depend on. People are fearful and scared. Resources in the food supply chain seem to possibly be drying up. Um, and we're dealing with, our personal issues and other things that we've dealt with. This is the reality. Racism still exists, but we need each other. So what are our options? Well, we can try to figure it out together and build together as cooperators. We can do P6, cooperate with one another, and all the other principles, and work towards a solution. Or we could do nothing as an option and just let the chips fall where they may and see what happens. We do have options, or we can, work through organizations like FCI to develop ourselves and use the platforms. And so O is for options, figuring out what are our options. And then W is the way forward. And we agree that when we're having the conversation. So one of the ways forward is that we're going to attend the FCI Live series and maybe follow up with one person after the series to see how we can take a deeper dive or how we can, further exchange and engage, because after all, we're in this together. And so that's the Grow tool. And you literally write it down on a piece of paper. And then when you get ready to have the conversation, and you can also give it to the group or the individual you want to talk to. And that way you have a subjective way to have the conversation without a whole lot of emotion, just getting through the conversation. And that has been very helpful for me in my career. Um, the last tool we have is the cost benefit analysis. I want to give credit to Dorothy. I think she's from Lindbergh, Illinois. Um, and she was part of the co creation session, and she offered this to the group of really just mapping out like, okay, we need to do something different. And if we don't, what is the cost of us not changing? Okay. What is the cost of us changing, doing different? What do I lose? What are the benefits of not doing anything, or the benefits of actually doing something different? And so really this is a grid where you can literally list the benefits and the cost of changing and doing something different. And it's something you can examine as a committee or a board or a management team, and see what makes sense for you. Okay, so we have some reflections and we'll open up the floor. And these were just some closing questions that we had. What would it look like to earn trust, not just ask for it? Where do we need to slow down so that we can go further together? And how do we want to be held accountable to the communities that we serve and the co-ops that we are building? All right, so I think that's the end of my slides there. Oh, we had a closing tool, the trust action planning. Yeah, from here, what can you do? Write down 2 or 3 actions that you can take this quarter or this year to help build trust, or if trust has been broken, rebuild trust, and who should be involved in that, and how can you actually measure, trust of your group, not just by membership numbers, but by some of the other things that we've discussed. Okay, yeah, I think that's it for real. All right. Okay, so I'll open it up. I know that I shared a lot. Wow. Okay, 30 minutes. So we have some time to talk.
Well, and some
If
stuff
you,
started to come up in the chat already. Keep throwing stuff in the chat, guys. One co-op just said, over-promising. That has been our co-op's challenge that has turned into a trust issue. I wonder, do you have any reflections or thought on that? they've done the overpromising. Trust has been damaged. Any thoughts on how they proceed?
Yes. Great question. I really would suggest the restorative circles as a way forward. And that's simply, calling a gathering, convening of your cooperators, and maybe you might need a facilitator. You might need someone who understands conflict management. It depends on how deep it is, because when you overpromise and underdeliver, people are hurt and they're disappointed and they lose trust. And maybe the person who's in front of the room or who's going to facilitate the conversation maybe shouldn't be the person who's perceived to be, the ones who have broken the trust, because you want to have a fruitful and an impactful dialogue. But making this is one of those brave spaces, making space for those people to express their grievances, and that they be listened to. And then, what can you do for real to actually address it in response, and just kind of reassure. And it may take more than one meeting, and being committed to that particular process. So I would suggest, maybe doing a few truth restorative circles, and you can call it what makes sense for your community, but making space for people to come and be heard, and then apologize. Really, I mean, name the harm. If just like you said, we've overpromised, and be upfront about that. We've overpromised, but it's not because we didn't want to deliver. Maybe it was a certain circumstances that happened that you weren't unable to, and the goal is still to be able to deliver it. And it's not that we're not delivering; it's just a delay. And explaining that to your folks. So hopefully that could be a way forward for you.
I want to jump back to Karen's comment. I see other ones coming in, guys. Wonderful. I want to take them kind of in order here so we'll get time with Dr. Karen or Dr. Angela. This is an important one, I think. Karen says, this is my exact struggle. I've been working on this for 6 years and I'm now barely breaking through to my South Side community in Chicago, despite there being two other co-ops, others in the suburbs. In the Black community, we just don't seem to believe the co-op business model is possible for us. I thought that was something you might want to speak to. So she's growing up in 6 years of organizing and feeling like her community doesn't know how to trust the Black community, which she's working with, her community does not know how to trust the co-op model.
Yeah, so that's not unique to your area, Karen, and it's a struggle. I think one of the ways in the Black community to help address that is that we have to look for financial resources, because people have shown up so much without something in return, with not tangibles, that I think that the Black community is at the point that they have to see something. So when they come, have some fresh food, have something to give. And some of the co-ops are developing in the opposite way. They went out and found a lot of money and they didn't bring the community along with them. And so the model has been a little bit, from what we've learned before, the cornerstone model that we were working with, we found out that the sequential order of building a co-op is not exactly how it has happened in the Black community. Some communities are able to secure money from their municipalities or other funders, but the community organizing hasn't happened. And some others have been organizing for years, but the money isn't coming. And so that's where the misalignment happens. And so I think people showing up and finding value in it is what is the key. And that may mean them going home with some fresh produce. It may mean them going home with a full belly. It may mean them going home with a gift card, And so I think, like, we're at the point now that we have to have some tangible resources for our people in order for them to really begin to buy in. And we don't want it to reach desperation, which we've been in desperation because we've been food redlined and dealing with food apartheid. We can't get an apple or a banana within 10 minutes in many communities. And so people want something in their hand, but it's something we can have a more conversation about. But that's what I have for you, just kind of off the top of my mind.
Excellent. I'm asking folks to put comments and questions in the chat first, and let's start there. If Dr. Angela wants people to unmute, she'll let them know. Thank you guys. Thanks. Yeah, Karen says thank you. Um, I wanted to ask you, I actually saw one co-op that cost seems to be very similar. That cost benefit analysis, you can do it within the board with them. I saw them do it in like the second or third community meeting. The cost benefit analysis of whether to have a co-op and what they would lose by not having it. Do you think that could, and they didn't only had like 30, 20, 30 people show up. Do you think that could work? Is like a community actually analyzing, I never ended up hearing the results, analyzing just what would be the benefits and the costs of deciding to organize a co-op.
Absolutely. That's something that businesses do, right, before they move forward. And so, um, and it even can create a go, no go decision, but also it's like, weighing up what, if we don't do this, we're going to have to still depend on other communities, or we're going to have to travel 30 miles, to be able to feed ourselves. If we do this, it's going to take a lot of effort, time, we're tired, but we'll be able to eat because you're growing something and I have something, and we're, cooperatively working together. So I think the cost benefit analysis definitely is a good tool to gauge how many things you have on the board for not doing it and for doing it, and then making an informed decision on how to move forward. So yes, I would say yes to that.
Cool. Excellent. And other things in the chat. Anyone want to throw anything else in the chat? I mean, I have a bunch of questions if no one else is going to talk, but I'm trying to let you guys talk first.
I don't mind if they unmute. It's okay if
Okay,
Cecily
cool.
raised her
So
hand.
Sean's next, and then we did hear from Dr. Angela. She's okay with unmuting, so I will put up together a queue still. So please do raise your hand if you want to unmute. And next is Sean. One thing that stuck with me is that Amaha mentioned to us, so that's Amaha Selassie from Gem City Market, is that our community takes a long time to buy in because they need to see it first. I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, we are like Missouri, the show me state. We want to see things. And the reality of it is that all co-ops don't get open. That's one thing. And two, because we're in evolving times, we're kind of reassessing what impactful co-op looks like. Does it have to be a 10,000 square foot retail store? Can it be a smaller version? Can we right size it, for the community? Can it take on a different model? One of the things we're saying is let us begin to do some food transacting while organizing so that we get in the habit of doing business together. That may mean establishing a farmer's market. It may mean putting together a purchasing or buying club. So we're buying in bulk together. They have a new concept called farm stops. Well, it's not that new, but it's being studied more. And so, you know, we organize from the programmatic side, but we're not developing the business side. And so looking for some kind of onboarding ramp to start doing business and transacting and see how that works together in the co-op. And that will get people engaged, and it will also, bring something impactful and tangible to the co-op. So that's one of the ways that we're looking to make that shift in the community. I hope that that's helpful.
I think it plays into that and is very interesting that Detroit, of course, opened this very large store that is overall very successful and going well, but that was built upon 20, almost 20 years of organizing with D-Town Farms and the Detroit Black People's Food Security Network. So I think it points to what you're saying is that they learned how to manage power and money together through smaller projects before Detroit, before they opened a co-op.
Yes,
So
let me add
Carol,
something real quick. I'm sorry, JQ. I wanted to
okay,
add something.
yeah,
Um,
oh sorry.
Shauna, I don't know if you're engaged with the Collective Courage Fund, but the next time they have their round, we have our round of grants. You should apply because once you get in the ecosystem, you could become part of a larger community where we're looking to get co-ops funded as a group, maybe say a group of 10 co-ops going to the funding community. Of course, each co-op has their own budget and startup and operating and the cost to get the doors open, but we're working to have a group of co-ops together so that we can get a group of co-ops funded and open just because of lessons that we've learned from Detroit and others and how long it's taking, to get done. So I'd like to give that as an offering. Okay, I see you've applied. All right, we'll look for you. Okay.
All right, Carol.
Thanks for this session. I was the person who talked about the overpromising. And a couple things is one is that it was the folks before us who did that. So we're
Mm.
trying to come in, be more transparent. The conversations with our own member owners and our immediate community, we're breaking through with them. It's the bigger community out there. It's the snarky comments on Facebook, and we know that's a cesspool, but they're also taking root. And those are the things that we're trying to address, especially as we're trying to raise money and also set the tone for the store that we hope to open soon and that will be open to everybody. So it's addressing those kind of issues. We're also one of those co-ops that got a lot of money from the government. And so we did not build the community around our store and getting everybody fully engaged. So we have a few things going on in the dynamic that maybe some other co-ops are experiencing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Carol. It sounds like you need to, I don't know if you have a communications person
Me.
or
Okay.
so yeah, it's almost like you have to do a counter campaign, because it's communicating to your stakeholders, the community at large. If people are on social media, there's two ways to combat that, right? One is do the thing, do what you say you're going to do, because once you're doing the work, then people can't they can say what they say, but the proof is in the pudding. But if there's a little bit of gaps or holes, and it's not moving quite as fast, then you have to come with a positive messaging campaign, um, about your co-op to be able to counter the negative information that's out there. But it does take time and energy and effort. I realize that. If you have a budget, you might, look to outsource some of that, to someone who could dedicate time to that while you're building other things. So yeah, I think that, it will take some communications effort to come up against those negative. And then you can look for free things too, things that don't cost, right? To be able to get your messaging out, like public comments at your, if you're working with your municipalities, and some social media things are free, but utilizing your existing networks to try to get things maybe in the newsletters or newspapers, and um, yeah, it's kind of takes some time, but it has to be intentional. And Gabby mentioned also naming and taking accountability for what happened, even if you weren't around when it happened. Can't work through the hurt if it isn't named within the organization or collective. So
Yeah.
agree.
Yes, thank you. And like I said, we've done that with our immediate community, but it's the bigger community out there, and it's just hard to not look defensive. And it does take time, and it is hurtful when, because, we're taking it personally. But yeah, this is all very helpful. So thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm gonna say one more thing and then I'll go to Opal. You might want to find a champion in the community, because sometimes if people perceive you as the one who it might not have been you personally, but if you
Hmm.
feel offensive or you don't want to feel hurt, you might need another voice or another face
Hmm.
to be the champion for the co-op and to help with some people call it PR, right? The public relations.
Hmm.
So yeah, maybe consider who's trusted, who can champion the cause out in the community at large, on behalf of the co-op as a possibility.
Okay, good point. Thanks.
Hi, Opal.
Hi, Dr. Angela. How you doing?
Wonderful. Thank you. Good
Good.
to
I
see
just,
you.
yeah, same. I just wanted to name a couple things that you mentioned that resonates, with us at Market 166. And one of the first thing that you mentioned was about sometimes, especially given the times that we're in, how it may become necessary to really think about what it means to provide food access to our communities. Of course, the beginning we thought, well, I wasn't there at the beginning, but I mean, I claim it because I'm now a part of it. At the beginning, we talked a lot about, the grocery store, the big grocery store that's, welcoming and shiny and, what our community deserves, et cetera. And we've got a, couple of market studies done now, one very recently, and a visioning plan support, report. And things are looking a little different in these days and in these days and times. And so, just having that, we're about to have that conversation with our, ownership, with the members, and, just thinking about how to broach that, in a way that, is the reality is that what we're seeing on paper, the data says that this food food access idea might take a different kind of look, might look differently than what folks have been talking about, for the last, I don't know, 6, 7 years.
Mm.
So that's a real conversation that's has to happen. And we're trying to talk about it in a really positive way, because it doesn't mean that we won't be able to provide access. It just may look different than what we've been talking about for some years. And then the other thing is I really lean into the idea of finding different ways to provide that access, that food access now, even if you're not at the place where you intend to be, your vision is, because we have a little, pilot pop-up store
Mm.
that is like, it's tiny. It's like uh maybe 10 by 10, if that big. But it's a great way for us to really um, find out sort of what needs to happen, what we need to do to really engage community, and to really find out what community really, really wants, in real time, but also to find out what the heck we're doing wrong, and really embrace that, and try to find ways to overcome that. So it's um I'm sorry, I'm taking a lot of time, but I mean, really, just I think it was Alana who said last night that there really isn't any way to look at this the wrong way. All of this is a way to learn stuff. It's whether, you're really um being active, or there's not a lot going on right now, but you're still working at it. That there's always a way to find good data out of engaging with folks from a, qualitative standpoint. So I just wanted to name those two things because they really resonate with us here at Market 166. And and it all ties into the trust thing, being able to have that conversation, and then being able to have those hard conversations, and then also being able to um, you know, uh, utilize the information that we're gathering from our community right now in real time about what the hell we're doing wrong, and what we could better, and what we are are successful at right now. It's all good information.
Thanks for sharing, Opal. I don't know if you heard Heather and James'
Yeah, I was there.
presentation on business concept.
Yeah.
I think that some of our co-ops might need to revisit that, because that's also emerging, but it's an iteration of what happens, particularly in Black co-ops. We kind of said, oh, we want to open a grocery store, but we didn't plan out, like, okay, is that a coffee shop, a commercial kitchen, and a deli, or is it just a place for you to come and get fresh produce and your herbs and spices? Like the vision of what the business actually is. We just know we want to provide fresh foods, to the community. And I'm sure when you got your feasibility study, it had, more specifics in it. But I think it kind of speaks to us revisiting the business concept and if that needs to be thought about with the co-op and agreed and what that actually looks like. Um, and I like the idea of you using what you have already. It might be a 10 by 10 space, but yeah, by all means, actually use it. And if you're getting feedback that helps inform what the community wants, I would definitely, say that's on the right track. Um, that's a right way to go. So thank you for sharing your reflections. Michelle said they're going to have the same conversation. And it's getting more critical for us right now. I mean, I can't say it any other way, not to, just to have a sense of urgency. We've always had a sense of urgency, but we're living in a moment different than any other moment that any of us have actually ever lived in. And so creating these cooperative systems is not, I don't think it's not a luxury like anymore, right? It's essential. It's like we have to figure out how to feed our communities and be able to feed ourselves. And it has to be sustainable, right? We know that groceries don't have large margins to begin with, but we do want to make sure they have enough margin, right, to be able to run itself and pay, be able to pay the workers and things. So I think the areas of work of organizing and business development, you having, folks in the co-op to look at that at the same time is also important. Understanding the 3 areas of work for the framework. And then, I'd lead you to the FCI action guide as a place to figure out like where you are and get a baseline and then see where your gaps are. Because you're saying, what are we doing wrong? It may not be that you're doing something wrong, but all the things you need to do, what have you done, and what still do you need to do? That checklist would be a good tool for you to look at. So I would point you to that.
I'll go grab the checklist while you continue to talk.
Okay, thank you. Any other reflections or questions? We still have about 7 minutes. Thank you, Vogel.
JT, I dropped it already, so you can stop.
Look at Miss Resourceful. Thanks, Gabby.
Thanks, Gabby.
I have a comment. Dr. Angela, I just want to thank you for bringing trust into the conversation because I feel like that's so foundational to our relationships, and co-ops are really all about relationships. And I think we have a lot to learn and teach, but mostly learn in the co-op space about how to build relationships with each other that are trusting. I don't think there's a lot of opportunities in our society for having those frank conversations. So I was thrilled to see this on the agenda, and I'm really grateful that you're taking it on. Thanks.
Thank you, Jade. I'm so glad you attended. I'm so honored. You know how much I adore you and respect your expertise in this area. So thank you so much for that reflection. Thank you, Jade. This was very good and informative moving forward towards a better tomorrow. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you all for the appreciations. This was helpful and much needed for our process as we are just getting started, and I have struggled with how to frame this for our small group. Understand, Renee. I definitely am thankful to FCI for all the tools they offer. They have so many free resources, and you don't have to struggle by yourself because the resources are there. This is a community of co-ops. The organization has set up peer learning groups, and so that those that are in the same stage of development as you can exchange and learn. And how many spaces do we have to actually do that? And so one of the things about the spaces that have been created is that they're educational, but they're inspirational because you get to come amongst your colleagues or your comrades, your family, your fellow cooperators, and it gives you the energy because sometimes you're in a silo in your town with your co-op, doing organizing, and it could get a little bit exhausting, but we understand one another. So stay tapped in to this network, stay tapped in.
All right. I'm gonna wrap us up. But can we take another moment because it's not just for this session. I would like to just take a second with your fingers, hands, whatever you want to do. Let's give Dr. Angela her flowers for creating this concept, bringing it to the framework. It is truly transformative. And it really was. Some of these things were collaborative. This was all Dr. Angela. And I think it's just amazing. So I want to make sure she's getting her flowers now and seeing how much the community values it. And I hope you're taking a look at the chat. But we are so lucky to have her on our framework editing team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick, I am going to thank all of our sponsors. I like thanking them. They're not just some random companies out there trying to get ads. These are our fellow cooperators, food movement leaders who are trying to forward the same movement we're all part of by contributing to make this series free. So thank you to them. Thank you for taking part in FCI Live by making it free for everybody. And please do check them out and support them. So it's hard to follow that session, but we have one more session, and this is Wednesday. It is Thursday, sorry, Thursday today at 3 p.m. Eastern or 2 p.m. Central, converting to co-op, stories from the field. This is a very different topic. We're seeing a great rise. There's always been a few co-ops where an existing grocery store was bought by the community and converted to a co-op, but it was rare. It is becoming a fast-growing trend, especially in rural communities. And so Chris Dilly, our Director of Startup Support, is going to be talking to 3 startup food co-ops, Blackberry Food Co-op and Tip Top Co-op, who intended to be conversions. That's how they started. They will convert. And Hudson Grocery Co-op, who had no intention of being a conversion and thought they were building a new store and came upon an amazing opportunity to keep jobs alive in their community and open their store sooner. So even if you don't think your co-op's going to convert, it's not a conversion project, you might want to check this out. And then we have a whole other week of sessions next week, kicking off with public officials as your co-op champions with Faye Mack, our past executive director and general, and also the board president of City Co-op in City Market in the East at one point, but also someone who has actually been in food justice work and actually working in her state government to get funding for that type of work for decades. So she knows a whole lot about how you build relationships, how you connect to public officials, how you help them become champions of your co-op, because we all know that can make a huge difference when it comes to all sorts of aspects like funding. All right, so I'm going to stop recording now, and if anyone wants to linger for a moment, absolutely feel free. But we are going to go ahead and wrap up. And these videos will be out to you a week from Friday. If you were here, you will get a link to absolutely all the videos next Friday, and then they'll go public the week after that.